Hello everyone and welcome to the Space Engineers Update 1037. Today is the release of factions and this tutorial will explain the way they work. Factions are still under development, more options and features will be added in the future. Creating a faction. Let's start with creating a new custom world in survival mode. Set the online mode to public so that other players can join. Start the world. Press K and click the Factions button. The list on the left side shows that there are no factions yet in this world. Click the Create button, write in the tag name of the faction, public and private info. Now press OK. Our faction is now shown in the faction window. All players in the world now know there is a new faction. The right side of the screen shows us information about our faction: name, public info, private info, and members. All faction info can be edited in case you need to do changes. Private info is visible only for the faction members. All information about factions, players, and blocks is saved in the world. For the creative mode, creating a new faction works the same way. Joining a faction. To join your faction, a player has to open the faction screen and select your faction from the list. The screen on the right side informs player about basic info and members that are already in the faction. By clicking the join button, a request is sent to the faction and waits for approval. If you open the faction screen and look into the members window, you can see the player's request to join your faction. Accept the player's request and click yes. Faction ranks. Now that we have a new member, we can promote him to a leader. Select player's name and click promote. In case you don't trust the player anymore, you can demote him to a regular member or kick him from the faction completely. There are 3 ranks available for players now. Member is the basic rank. Player can't accept or send any requests, kick players, or edit their ranks. Being a member means you can use equipment shared by your faction and being safe from faction turrets. Leader is a higher rank that allows to edit faction info, accept and send requests, and kick or edit members. A leader can't kick or demote another leader. Founder is the highest rank and can be achieved only by creating a faction. This rank can be transferred or shared to another player. When some player is a founder, it means he created the faction. Founder can leave the faction, but the rank will be lost. The leadership will be up to the leaders. There should be at least one leader in the faction before the founder leaves. Otherwise, the faction can't grow. Founder has unlimited access over the faction, including all rank and info edits, and even dismiss of the whole faction. The founder also promotes the first leader that can help him to build and expand the faction. Managing a faction. To fully manage a faction, you need to be rank founder or leader. The player with this rank can edit basic faction stats, but more important, set conditions with other factions. As default, all factions are set as potential enemy. You can propose peace to a faction for trading purposes or work together against an enemy. Select a faction you want to be friend with and click Propose Peace button. Icon next to the addressed faction means a pending peace request. The addressed faction sees a white flag next to your faction's name. The peace request must be accepted by the addressed faction to obtain the allied stat. In case you change your mind, you can always cancel the request. If an allied faction starts acting hostile, you can declare war. Declaration of war doesn't have to be accepted. It is a signal to the addressed faction that you are no longer friends. Dismiss of a faction. Faction will dismiss itself when the last player leaves. As long as there is at least one player in the members list, the faction continues. Dismiss of a faction by a founder can be done by kicking all the members and leaders, and then leave as the last person. Dismiss of a faction can lead to a large damage on property, since blocks are owned by individual players, and turrets will destroy anything that is enemy or unknown. Text and HUD marker color. The color of player's name informs you about the relationship to you. Red name means enemy or unknown player. White name indicates player from an allied faction. Green name is for players that are in the same faction as you are. HUD markers also changes color based on the relationship to you. This is best visible on beacons. Red is property of an enemy or an unknown player. White goes for allied player's property. Green is property of a player in your faction. Blue HUD marker means you are the owner of the block. Block ownership. Each block that has a computer component in its construction can have its owner and be shared with others. Ownership is not set by a grid, but by a block. This means that you can have one large ship with many different blocks that belong to different players. For example, in order to pilot a ship, you need to own or share cockpit, thrusters, reactors, gyroscopes, and other important blocks. Otherwise, the ship won't fly very well. When welding a block in survival, the person that uses hand welder tool to weld in the computer component layer becomes the owner of the block. The critical computer component layer is also indicated by a blue line on the construction progress bar on the right side of the screen. The owner of the block can change the owner and sharing settings. To do that, open Control Panel of a block and look at the Owner tab. The ownership can be set to nobody, myself, or a specific player playing on the same server. For example, if you build something for your friend, you can directly set him as the owner. Setting a block to nobody means the block is available for anybody who wants it. If you are the one that built the block, and some other player enters the terminal and changes the ownership to himself, then it's not yours anymore. Building in creative mode always sets the ownership to nobody as default. Block ownership in a world created before update 1037. All blocks built before this update have set ownership as nobody. To gain control over a whole ship or a station, open the control panel, select all blocks, and set the owner to me. Now it became your property. Inherited ownership. Welding can be done by hand welder tool, but also by large or small ship welder blocks. In case of welding a block by using a welder block, the ownership is set by the owner of welder block that was used during placing the computer component layer. It can happen that even if you are the pilot that built the computer layer, you are not the owner of the finished block. Hacking of block's owner status. Ownership of a block can be hacked. To change ownership to yourself, grind a block until you remove the whole computer layer and then weld it back again. As mentioned before, the critical computer layer is indicated by a blue line on the construction progress bar. The gain of ownership allows you to access blocks options and settings. The rule of inherited owner applies in this case as well. Owner of the welder block equals owner of hacked block. Remember that the ownership is per block, not per grid, which means you have to hack many blocks in order to steal a whole ship. Block sharing. Every block that can be owned can be also set for sharing. To access the share option, you need to be the owner of the block. You can choose 3 types of sharing: no share, sharing with faction, and sharing with anybody. The advantage of sharing is that nobody can change the ownership, and you can decide when and with who you want to share. For example, you can own a whole large ship and share its systems with your faction. In case of trade or exchange of materials with other faction, you can create a separate group of conveyor systems set as share with all. Reset of blocks ownership. In case you get into a problem that your world needs to reset all ownership, for example due to ship being damaged by its own turrets, you can edit the world's advanced options. Check the Reset Ownership option and load the game. All blocks ownership are set to nobody now. Once you make changes in the world and save, option Reset Ownership gets unchecked automatically. Electricity. Electricity is shared within the whole grid. There is no owner-defined electricity supply. Reactors and solar panels supply the other blocks, no matter the owner or sharing settings. Permanent death. New feature allows you to choose the medical room you want to use for respawn. If player dies and there is no available medical room, either players or shared, player has to choose to spawn in a respawn ship. The option to spawn in a respawn ship is always available in the respawn screen, but use it only when there is no other option. By spawning in a respawn ship, player respawns as a new astronaut with erased game progress. This means player loses access to his faction and all blocks he owned. All blocks that player owned stay in the game. In case they were shared, other players can still use them. Permanent death also erases ranks from faction founders and leaders. That means that a precise attack can completely ruin or cripple a faction. Setting up medical rooms. Permanent death may seem cruel, but there are many ways you can avoid it. By sharing medical rooms, you can save your friends from your faction and even other players as well. In case you or a friend dies and there is no available medical room, it is possible to wait in the respawn screen and hope someone will share a medical room. To see new available respawn rooms, keep clicking the refresh button. This way, players can get saved from permanent death. Share your medical room with your faction, and all faction members can respawn on its position even if they lose all their medical rooms. You can also share medical room with anybody. Every player in the server will see your medical room in the spawn list and can use it to respawn. Be careful with this option. It can serve well for recruiting new faction members, but also as an easy way to get an enemy on board. If you want to make your own private medical room and be sure nobody knows its location, keep the sharing at no share option. In case of need, you can always change the share option to aid your faction or friends. Next to factions, we also added few more features. Now it is possible to set the beacon visibility distance. Copy-paste an object and use the rotation keys to align the selection the way you need. Dead astronauts can now be looted. In case you are short on ammunition, this feature can be very handy. The corpses stay in the space for approximately 5 minutes. This is all for now. We hope you will enjoy this update, and we are looking forward to see all the faction ships, fighters and stations.